My name's Emma, and I'm just doing this video to hopefully help Juliet. Yeah, I'm just going to try and inform you on my life, really, and what I've been through and how I am now. So try not to make it too complicated. So basically, going back, I don't know, back about to when I was 15, I had scoliosis and I had corrective scoliosis surgery. So I had my spine straightened, and ever since then, really, I was poorly for 14 years onwards. So to begin with, I instantly felt like I couldn't breathe properly. I had a heartbeat in my stomach. I was always feeling really faint. I had loads of kidney infections, yeast infections straight away post surgery, and then I developed celiac disease. So I was allergic to gluten and bread. So yeah, I pretty much over like the course of 14 years became allergic to everything I ate. Started off with the celiac disease, so I cut wheat out. I cut that out for a year. After a year of cutting that out, I felt a bit better, but then I started to not feel good again. I cut processed food out, ate all organic, tried to eat certain meats, so I cut red out. It seemed to be every time I changed something diet-wise, it would give me some temporary relief, and then eventually my body would reject it. And it seemed to get worse over the years. So I had tried the low histamine diet, the FODMAP diet, yeah, you name it. I was on a lot of medication for 7 years out of the 14 for pain. Was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, so my joints were hurting. I was getting lots of aches and pains, backache. I was getting pins and needles in my legs, my feet, my hands. So many things to try and remember. But so, yeah. I then got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome at the age of 28. It turned out that obviously this is a genetic condition. I was diagnosed with hypermobile EDS, so my joints would dislocate a lot, and I had tummy problems, POTS. So POTS is where your heartbeat can rise dramatically from lying to standing. Sometimes it's even bad lying down. I found out I had a lot of dysautonomia problems, so it wasn't just POTS. I pass out with a normal faint sometimes just by standing on the spot. Went to see someone for this, and he was very good. And we did a lot of autonomic function tests, which showed a few things. Heart palpitations, heart murmur. So migraines, headaches, food intolerances. I ended up thinking I had mast cell disorder because I was just becoming allergic to everything, even like the household objects and going outside the house. I catch bugs. My immune system was impaired. But basically every year something new developed. I had vertigo, where I couldn't tell what was up or down, or I had pleurisy of the lung. Constant. The food got worse and worse with quantity, so eventually it doesn't matter what I cut out, whether it was just organic blended food, mushed food, smoothies, nothing. I actually found that harder to digest when it was in a liquid form. But basically the quantity got harder and harder and harder until I could only manage like small amounts. I then got put onto pre-digested drinks that were given to me by a dietitian, because I was under the gastro doctor. During this time, had loads of gastro tests as well. I had a lot of different tests with different doctors through rheumatology. Saw a vascular surgeon. Basically went through the whole department system in the NHS, gynecology, you name it. They all knew me. But towards the end of the 14 years, I started to get worse. So they put me on this new drink where it was called Elemental Extra, and it's different to the other drinks they offered me because I felt like I wasn't absorbing. So at this point, my stools were yellow. I was losing a lot of weight, and the quantity was a thing as well. At this point, I had gastroparesis, where my stomach doesn't empty, but they can't explain why. And then the elemental drinks they put on, basically gave me the elemental drinks, and what that does is it goes into your stomach. It takes 20 minutes to seep through the stomach wall lining, and then it goes into your blood. So it takes 20 minutes for the drink to reach your bloodstream. Yeah, but then obviously you've got to wait that 20 minutes so that liquid is in your stomach for 20 minutes. So it's quite hard to manage lots of those. But when I was on those at first, I managed 5, loved it. Again, I managed them, but then after a couple of months, my body was like, no, we don't like this anymore. So it started to reject the quantity again. And I'd had like every test done at this point, pretty much, that they could think of. So I thought, well, I'm not giving up. I've not ruled out everything yet. So I heard about superior mesenteric artery syndrome and thought, not had that looked at. It caused, many of the eating problems, the nausea I was getting and the sickness. So I thought, yeah, I'd just like to feel happy just to get that ruled out. My local gastro doctor in the hospital I'm here where I'm at couldn't, didn't think I fitted the symptoms for SMAS. That's what it's shortened for. And basically said, no, Emily, I think you should stop looking now. I think it's due to your Ehlers-Danlos loss. You need to accept this. I thought, I'd rather get it looked at still. And then I can tick it off anyway, even if it isn't. So I contacted a few specialists in London, emailed them and rung them. And some of them would come back to me and they couldn't explain to me how these conditions occurred or how they arose. And they also didn't know when I gave them the abbreviations, they were like, oh, could you just explain what that stands for? And I was like, oh, no. At this point I was really poorly and I wasn't getting any nutrition. So I just thought, nah, I'm not paying to go and see them because if they can't answer all my questions, then, it's not worth my time. Because at this point as well, I'd already been to see so many people around the country over the 14 years. So I paid private and then also seen people on the NHS, but at different hospitals around the country. Yeah, so time wasn't on my side. I also was in a wheelchair towards the end of the 14 years due to constantly passing out. I couldn't cook for myself. I couldn't think. I couldn't concentrate. I had vein pain in my groin. My hip was really painful. Yeah, it kind of was like MS towards the end. I would just collapse and have the shakes, and I couldn't explain what was going on. And then after those periods of time, I couldn't stand up. I'd tell my brain to send a message, stand up again, and literally my legs just didn't function for like hours at a time after I'd had one of those episodes. So that was quite concerning. And then obviously I was in more and more agony with this vein pain. So I felt I had vein pain. So basically did a lot of research online, read a lot of medical journals, tried to, because I was bedbound, so I had a lot of time to do all this. Came across this guy, Professor Scholbach, who's in Germany, Leipzig. He's amazing, but basically flew out to see him, and he ended up doing a colour Doppler ultrasound scan and found 5 artery compressions with me personally, and said that the reason I would have developed these compressions was due to my spinal surgery and having Ehlers-Danlos loss. But before I'd even flown out to him, just to fill you in, I read a really good write-up by him, and that's what really convinced me to go and see him, because he was the only person online where I'd actually read how he thinks he's found evidence of stretchy lax collagen or the lordosis of your spine being the cause of these artery compressions developing. So I thought, before I even saw him, oh, that fits me to a T. I've got Ehlers-Danlos loss. I've always had stretchy collagen, and then I had the spinal surgery. So, yeah, he seemed like the man that was going to be able to help me. So, yeah, when I saw him and he diagnosed these 5 conditions, he said I had MALS, median accurate ligament syndrome, it's a ligament compressing my aorta, which basically was, causing the gastroparesis, the stomach emptying problems. It was impairing my blood flow to my intestines. So my toilet issues. So I forgot to mention I had toilet issues, so I couldn't go to the toilet. I was always, constipated, but I didn't have any control over my digestive, going to the toilet wise. So sometimes I would soil myself, again like MS, or wet myself with no warning. But also I'd have like months where I was constipated, and then a month where I'd be having constant diarrhea. So there was like no pattern really. So the MALS was causing a lot of this, and it was also causing the heartbeat in my stomach, and the nausea. The Nutcracker syndrome was another one I got diagnosed with. It's shortened for NCS. And that was basically giving me all the infections, the kidney infections that I had pretty much straight away when I had the spinal surgery. So that spinal surgery really caused MALS and Nutcracker syndrome. Over the 14 years, I then developed May Turner syndrome and pelvic congestion. I know I didn't have these straight away from the spinal surgery, but because MALS and Nutcracker had been left for so long, I then developed pelvic congestion and May Turner syndrome. So probably about 7 years after having those artery compressions, I then developed the other ones, because that's when I started to experience vein pain, groin pain, pain like in my vulva area, lady bits, which is embarrassing, my hip, in my legs. I'd have to raise my legs up because the blood, it was just so painful. But each year that got worse, until I was to the point I was in a wheelchair. But then even a wheelchair I found agonising. It really, really hurt my hip and my bottom area, and it was giving me sciatica pain. Doctors here just said it was joint pain or nerve pain, which I just knew it wasn't, because I know what they feel like as well, because I obviously have Ehlers-Danlos, so I was getting different pain feelings. But so yeah, I then said, okay, well, how do we go about managing this? I really want to get it sorted. I was ecstatic when I got diagnosed. I was like, oh, I'm so happy. I pretty much like I'd won the lottery when he diagnosed my artery compressions, whereas my mum was like next to me crying. But to me, it was like I got a reason for what was going on, and until that point, no one back at home in the UK had said, Emma, this is what's going on with you. So yeah, I just kind of felt like, knowledge is power. I've got some answers here. I can work with this, and then I can work towards getting better. He basically said, a lot of the symptoms I was describing with the POTS, the dysautonomia, the eating, the allergies, everything I was describing, he said, it can all be caused by my artery compressions. And obviously my artery compressions came about because of my Ehlers-Danlos and my scoliosis surgery. I said to him, how can I get this fixed then? So he put me on a course of aspirin for 8 weeks, because aspirin can sometimes help the blood flow, and I didn't want to just jump into surgery. I wanted to go back home and research what else was available back home as well. But I did actually ask him when I was there, could you recommend anyone in the UK that I see who could fix all this? And he said personally he can't recommend, he didn't think there was anyone he could recommend in the UK, but he said that there was, the person he felt he trusted the most with these conditions was someone called Professor Sandmann in Germany, who is currently working in Dusseldorf, Mettmann, Evangeliner's Hospital. So yeah, I flew back home after the, oh no, one other thing, basically, I also asked him, I knew already by doing a lot of research that, stents were often used in the UK to fix these conditions, and he basically said, I wouldn't advise having stents because he sees lots of people who have had stents and they've failed and they're not helping their pain. So basically he was saying, if you have a stent, it does correct the blood flow, but it's not compression, it's not fixing the full compression that is pushing on the artery. So even though the artery and the blood flow is sorted, what surrounds the stent can still be pushing on it, and that can sometimes break the stent. But also, it may not break the stent, and people maybe finally have blood flow, but it can still cause pain and nausea because it's pushing on that stent so it's not really getting rid of the full symptoms all the time. So I just said I basically want the surgery that has the highest success rate, which is why he then said no. That's why you need to see Professor Sandmann. So I flew back home, tried the aspirin for 8 weeks. I got worse over the 8 weeks. I then flew back out and then got re-scanned because obviously I thought having a second scan might be useful just to see if anything is different, to see if it picks up the same things. And yeah, so I had a second scan with him 8 weeks prior to seeing him, and it showed all the same things. Apart from it showed a few new things. Since I'd been on the aspirin, it showed that I had this new vein going down my groin, like new channels. It's like the aspirin was sort of helping my blood supply more. So my body was trying to fix itself by creating these new pathways to bypass the compression. But obviously it hadn't. But I'd had these extra veins, and it was causing me agony in my groin. It had also changed the blood flow slightly from my left kidney to my right kidney, but it wasn't enough to help my left kidney or nutcracker syndrome. So I was kind of satisfied at this point. Well, he's found the things that he found the first time round. I really want to get this fixed. Back home, before I went to see him, in the UK, I had said, he's found these things. What could you do here still? And they only offered me an MRI. To go and get my mouths looked at. They wanted to diagnose them with their tests, but they only put me in for one, and I'd been told by Professor Schollback I need to fix all 5 compressions to be fully better. Everything he found, he said, needs fixing, otherwise you may be left with some symptoms that are still not good, health-wise. So I thought, I really, really had no more time, At this point I was really, really underweight, malnourished. I was only getting worse. I actually, felt like, although I was getting fed into my bloodstream through the elementals, regardless, anything I seemed to have quantity-wise, no matter how it was put into my body, the quantity just, it sped up my deterioration. So the more I had, the more input, wherever it was from, the more, basically, the worse I got, the worse my POTS got, the worse, my nausea, my sickness got. So yeah, I then thought, no, yeah, I want to have the surgery out there. I'd talked to a lot of people who had had surgery with him, and I've heard nothing but good things. He's pretty much helped some really, really tricky cases. So like he's operated on a lot of people with vascular Ehlers-Danlos, which we don't tend to do in the UK because that's risky. But again, I don't really think veins is fully understood yet in the UK. There needs to be a lot more work looked into the vascular system. But I'm not trying to knock them. I just think we really should be looking at these as a whole and maybe not one or two. And also, the venogram, CTA, MRI, everything in UK, that's gold standard, and that should pick them up. But I had testing with him which showed other things that had been missed in the UK, and I had it twice. So why didn't it show up? Because I don't know. But I did feel like it's shown up for a reason. Maybe it's, I want all of that fixing. So I went and had the surgery with Sandman, and it was a tough surgery. It was like, the first week I couldn't even talk. The second week I was put back in a room, but it was tough. But as soon as I got out of the surgery, even lying in bed, I could breathe. I felt like I could breathe, and I could smell for the first time. I haven't been able to smell for ages and not even realised. Like for instance, like my mum put a lip salve on my lips, and I was like, what is that smell? And I never smelt it was a lip salve I'd used for ages. It always had a smell, but I always thought, it must be a rubbish lip salve because I can't really smell it properly. And then when I woke up, I was like, what is that? And it was like, didn't like it, and then I never used it again. But that's just that was just an example of me being able to smell. Silly, but I never thought about it before. I just felt like I could breathe. You get a full breath of air, eating, I couldn't eat for 2 weeks post-surgery because it's such a long surgery, the anaesthetic, nothing was moving. I had trapped air. It was a bit like my system had just shut down. I needed to reboot it. So yeah, had a couple of enemas to get the digestive, to empty myself as well. And when I got out and back into England, I could eat food for the first time. It was amazing. Before I had the surgery, I couldn't even manage water, not even a sip. And the constant nausea was there, whereas this was different. I felt like everything I was experiencing prior to the surgery had gone. Obviously, I was experiencing new pain from surgery, But to me, it wasn't even like what I was going through before. I felt like I was dying before. And it turned out I was dying because when they opened me up, they said that my intestines had gone ischemic. I think I've said that right. But basically, it was different colour. And it was thin as well, and basically said I wasn't getting enough blood supply to my intestines. So in a sense, you know, if I'd have left that, could have had another complication because of the lack of blood flow, which no one had found in the UK. So it was good I had the surgery when I had it. If I'd have waited like a couple of more months, I think I probably would have been, you know, I felt like I was dying. I honestly felt like dying, and that might have been why I felt that bad, because of the intestines. So yeah, post surgery, I could stand, I could sit on the plane, I could stand without still on the spot for the first time without feeling like I'm gonna faint after 2 minutes, and that's all I'd ever been used to for 14 years, which is amazing. So, you know, my POTS has dramatically got better. Probably only get a little teeny episode like once in a blue moon, but when I say episode, it's not stopping me from doing anything. The only thing I'm struggling with that, so basically fibromyalgia is gone, joint pain, everything, all the things I was experiencing with the food, everything, it's all gone, except I'm still left with joint pain and subluxations, and my hip compression has been aggravated because I've done too much recently and my hip keeps dislocating and popping out, so I don't think that's helping the vein compression I had in my hip. So I'm going to have to be really careful with that, and if needs be, you know, go and get that rescanned, because of my Ehlers-Danlos loss, I'm always going to have this problem in my hip. Yeah, and I have moved house, which is pretty mental. In the space of, like, I think I moved house 4 months post-surgery, so it's a bit crazy. I've learned that after, you know, it's going to take me a full year to recover. Even though I feel amazing, I need to take it steady and not rush into things. Eating-wise, at post-surgery, I was able to eat things, which to me was amazing. Water, you know, drink. I couldn't drink things before. But to a normal person, it still probably wouldn't have been normal, because I had to eat small, little and often throughout the day, you know, not set meals. So it was like a gradual process of like trying to fatten myself up and get my body used to digesting again, because it's had so long where it wasn't fully digesting for 2 years pretty much completely. So I had to sort of retrain my body. But 3 months post-surgery was when I had a meal, and, you know, quantity didn't affect me at all anymore. Dinner, breakfast, tea, just eat like a pig now. So yeah, it's so nice. I don't feel sick. That's another thing. My sleep, I can sleep for the first time, but it's like a normal. When I say I get tired now, it's a normal tired. It's not like a chronic fatigue tired. Before, I was just constantly permanently tired, couldn't drive, couldn't focus, had to be in bed all the time. Yeah, it was immense. So yeah, I really hope Juliet can get the surgery out there, because I think this is the right thing that she's doing. Another thing I say is, obviously Juliet hasn't had spinal surgery like I have. So just to make it clear, so Professor Shorback's findings is about how the lordosis can create these artery compressions, or stretchy collagen can cause them. So just for me, I'm like a one-off. So I don't think they've ever, Professor Shorback, seen someone who's spinal surgery before. But basically, you can get these conditions just through having stretched laxy collagen. Some people aren't even diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, and they have it. It's hard to get that diagnosed, and you have to see the right person for that also. And also, it's becoming more common now in the last 3 years in the UK, Ehlers-Danlos. So it's, again, we're still learning about Ehlers-Danlos now here. With my spine being changed, it changed the shape, but other people don't have to have spinal surgery to cause these. They could have been born with, it's the lordosis, so it's the angle. So they could have just had the anatomy and been born with a slight the lordosis isn't the norm, and that's just how they've always been. So they're going to be prone to developing these compressions. They could have had an accident. They could have had a spinal injury, slipped discs, you know, lifted something too heavy, and it can shift. You can shift your lordosis slightly. Childbirth can change the lordosis. Trying to think what else. And surgeries, you know, if we don't understand these conditions properly, when you're having another surgery, like me having, I had all my organs pulled up when I had my back straightened, which again wouldn't have helped because I'm extra stretchy. So they've like lifted them up, but probably maybe they shouldn't have moved everything so much up, and they weren't aware at the time when they did my surgery that I even had Ehlers-Danlos loss. So, you know, there's loads of factors that can cause these conditions. Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is basically, yeah, there are different ways people can develop these. They're more prominent in women because the lordosis is different to a man's, but it doesn't mean that a guy or a man can not, you know, they can still develop compressions. Again, it depends on their anatomy and their lordosis. So yeah, hope that's helped, and I wish Juliet all the best, and I hope she gets the help she needs. Bye guys.